So, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this invitation. It is a pleasure to be here with you all, and of course, sharing with you. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask me questions at the very end of the presentation or maybe during the breaks. Let's see. So, first of all, I loved San Fernando. It is a beautiful place. So, I am from Saskatchewan University. I'm talking about welfare and behavior. When I talk to my students, I like by starting considering that students should learn or consider why we need to learn about behavior when we're going to work with any type of animal or species. We need to know how they behave on a regular basis in order to understand when there are some problems or if the methods we're using, the management we're using is having the proper effect by behavior, and if we understand behavior, we'll know how to take care of it, and that will lead us to supply welfare. When I talk about animal welfare, I am talking about, I like to use the trilogy or the definition by using health and biological function, which is positive, wide, affective states, which are positive, and opportunities for them to develop or to act in a normal fashion. So, when I talk about the behavior of pigs, I'd like to, I want students to think where pigs come from. This is a home species, home range site, and it's related with some wild relatives. And when we talk about pigs' behavior, I mean, the ones who have or the ones who work with these animals, we know that they tend to have some specific zones in their areas for some behaviors. When we talk about wild pigs, we'll see that in the territories they have some specific areas for feeding, for resting and sleeping, and especially for uh, their feces. So, if we think about these wild animals, there are some groups where they have some plenty of space where they will prefer to be in a uh, to have one place for eating and also for their feces. Same situation happens in the farm pigs. Talking about the temperature regulation, temperature will have some specific behavior when they are hot. And when they're cold, they will try to find, in the case of heat, for instance, they will find some shade there, they will change their activities. They will prefer to be, when hot, when it is hot, they will go to a fresher place. And when it is fresher, they will do some other activities. Another method of temperature regulation will be playing in mud. So when these animals have this possibility, they have this mud bath in order to evaporate some of the heat for some protection against some insects as well. And when they are cold, they get together. We can see that in piglets. When the temperature is not appropriate, they get together. So when we think about behavior of home pigs, domestic pigs, or comparing them with these wild pigs, we'll see that these alerts, I mean, domestic pigs aren't afraid of human beings. It is easier to manipulate them. But when we're talking about the behavior as such and the quality of behavior, what we're talking about is basically how they have this behavior. It is going to be kept. The number of the quantity it's going to be seen different between wild and domestic pigs. But what do I mean by this? Depending on the access to resources, domestic pigs will be more or less or will have a certain behavior. They will not stop having their own behavior, but it is going to be lower in the time they are devoting to a certain behavior. This tells us that behaviors of domestic pigs that we have in farms has not varied, has not changed from what their wild relatives are. We can see that with some feral pigs escape from farms, they adapt easily in the wild. And that indicates that their behaviors, inborn behaviors, are there. And therefore, once they have the possibility to put them into place, they will have them there. We want to, when we talk about animal behavior, it is important to understand the social structure of them, how this individual live in groups. And I like to think, in this case, in some big groups, it is normal for them to live in a family group. Only zoos with their piglets, and piglets will have the possibility to socialize, to learn some behaviors of some other in the group. They have the possibility to play and explore together. After the winning, what happens is that juveniles and adults will stay in the same territory, but not so close to the family. In this case, zoos will come back to the original group, and males will go their own path. They will be in groups of three individuals maximum, and afterwards, as they grow older, they get separated. What we'll see is that male will get together with zoos just for mating. Why am I mentioning this? Because we need to see how we're having our domestic pigs in our farms. Talking about social elements, we need to have some considerations related to the linear dominance and hierarchy. Pigs are quite interesting in the sense that hierarchy, it is not going to be determined by dominance after a fight or aggression. It is going to be done in a different fashion where the subordinated one will avoid conflict. Once again, why am I mentioning this? Because as I said before, domestic pigs have a behavior which is basically similar to the wild ones. And once again, it is important to uh, keep in mind how to have them in farms. So they live in families, they are related, they know each other, and they avoid conflict because they know who the other individual is. They know him or her, they know how to identify them according to size, status, and they will not try to take the position of an individual. And when I talk about linear dominance, it is said that we have A dominates B and B dominates C, and adults dominate sub-adults, and sub-adults dominate juveniles. And we have these sets of dominances. So sometimes there is some conflict. When do we see that in wild pigs, for instance? There will be, for instance, there will be some competitions for food that is not so common because they do respect their territories. Territories are already set and they are overlapped sometimes, and they know they can identify that through the odor on trees or nests, they will know which is the territory of different groups and they will avoid conflict. And conflict in a group, within a group, it is not so common. Talking about activities and the food consumption, animals, these pigs will prefer to eat or have activities in periods where it is colder or fresher, and they will prefer to rest when it is hot. Something important to consider in the pig's behavior is that when they're active, 75% of that time, active time, 4 hours, for instance, 3 hours are going to be devoted for rooting, grazing, and exploring. They will not just be interacting with other individuals, they will be constantly exploring their environment and feeding, eating. Something related to the soul's behavior, which is inborn. I have a video, but I cannot play it, unfortunately. The link is there. You can see it later. During the labor, souls in a group will get separated 3 days before the labor. There will be some aggressivity when souls want to separate because the other will try to follow him. They will find a nest, an area where they feel safe, secure, nearby water, where there's also, they can also see the environment to avoid predators. They will scratch the floor and they will bring some straw or some other material in order to build this nest that sometimes it is up to 1 meter tall. When we have the piglets, once they're born, we have an interesting behavior which is called the teeth preference. They will be born, piglets will be born, and they will find the the zones where most of the milk is produced in the abdominal zone near by the leg, and they are creating a dominance, and there will be some fights for that preference position. So in this period of, let's say, maternity, we have a behavior that the ones who are, I mean, I don't know if you have seen it, I mean, sows have some vocalizations when they are milking, and they call, they groan. Those are soft, and they try to get the attention of the piglets. But there's a specific moment during that vocalization when milk it is falling, and it lasts 20 seconds. So therefore, it is a really important behavior for piglets to identify that that is the moment for drinking milk. At the moment, after the weaning in these wild animals, and it's also seen in some farms, piglets will explore the surroundings and consuming some solid food after 1 day old. And they will increase that considerably as they grow, having a peak between 6 and 8 weeks. It is a period where sows also deanimate piglets to feed from her. She will be aggressive against piglets to avoid them to, to the milking. Something important, which is also part of the work that I've been working at the university, it is the development of the behavior in piglets. This development in any species, even in human beings, will be a combination of the environment and also the genotype. In the case of pigs, we have that during this period, as I said before, they are being brought up in groups. They have access to some other piglets, different ages or similar age, where they will learn to socialize. This is a critical period in the behavior development. They learn to socialize. They also learn who is the dominant one in the group. They also learn to identify the dominant one, and they know how to avoid conflict. During this period, we have this play behavior, which is so important in species, even in human beings, that helps the development of this behavior. This play behavior starts at 2 days old, and it has some peaks between 2 and 6 weeks. And it allows the animal to know their territory through playing, motor skills, locomotor skills. They start running, right? This is a brief video, one of the experiments that we did at Saskatchewan University. We give them more space. So they get to know their environment. They play with objects they have around. This allowed them to explore, to learn from what they have around. And above all, the social behavior, as I said before, this behavior where they learn how to get involved with others.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giuliana. Big round of applause for you, and we'll continue with the conferences. Okay, the question I wanted to ask is what is defined by piglets? Okay, that occurs during the first 3 days in the first week where they start establishing what does not mean that it can change. It is also important to know why it can happen if they want to have different childless from mothers. So it is important to know once this is established to diminish, to decrease the possibilities for aggression. That will be aggression. Piglets, once more, again, will like to acquire the teat, producing more milk. Then, ideally, this should be done in 24 hours, in the first 24 hours, but that might be a period up to 3 days. Thank you very much. One more question, and this will be the last one, is the amount of times pigs are fed influence with the behavioral programs? As I was saying, when they are awake, when they are active, they tend to use 75% of their time in activities, in what's exploration, uh, feeding, the way we feed them will have an influence, of course, but at the same time, it depends on how many animals are inside the barn, the space they have to get feed. It's not just one aspect to be considered. Other aspects are, for example, if they have access to other resources such as enrichment, space for interaction, to hide and explore.